Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Very good. Okay, now. Well, hello there. Anyway, hope you had a chance to join me. I had some technical difficulties there for a while. Seems that this podcasting setup, you have YouTube obviously now, but we also have the other software that's doing the video capture, and getting those two to talk to each other is not the most straightforward of things to do. So, but we got it done. Anyway, a couple things I want to talk about now. One is the Trump wants Canada's water. What the hell? What does it mean he wants Canada? How delusional does this guy? How delusional? What's he capable of? What's he going to want to do? Invade the land of Oz next, or claim Wonderland? Is the Mad Hatter insulting him or something? What is going on with this guy? This guy is he's bouncing off the frickin' walls. Wanting to take over Greenland, and now he wants Canada's water. And one report said he wanted a port. I was like, what? Just don't go into a country and take their water and take their ports and stuff like that. This guy is so crazy. It's not really not a matter of left or right or Republican or Democrat. It's sanity or insanity is what it is. But unfortunately, his followers, both in the Republican Party in Capitol Hill and in the homes of the MAGA voters, they see no wrong with this guy. They still support him. 45% of the American people still think this guy is great. I mean, how much damage does this guy have to do before people realize this guy's a disaster? Back in the 1930s, or after, I should say, late 1920s, when the stock market crash and the Great Depression happened, I mean, people were PO'd, okay, and that's why they all switched over from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party at that time. But nobody thought the Republicans were crazy. They just thought they weren't doing their job as well as they should. That's all. So people were out of work. People were, losing their homes and their farms, and there was all kinds of misery in the United States at that time. But they weren't thinking of the Republicans as being nasty people in any way. They were still good, honorable people. They just didn't have their heads screwed on straight when it came to what to do about the problem. And so people just felt there was a better way to go. But there was no thinking these people were evil or insane or even stupid. They were just just wrong. And so the political discourse back then, as bad as the situation was still pretty good. But here it's our political discourse is just, I don't even call it discourse anymore. The two sides are so far apart they can't talk to each other. And the fact that the Trump supporters, the MAGA nuts, they don't follow rules of logic. Trump is destroying them, and most of Trump's problems, most of Trump's actions, are hitting the MAGA faithful more than it's hitting, people who are of the Democratic persuasion. It's not hitting people in the cities nearly as much. It is getting, of course, the rise in food prices and things like that. That hits everybody equally. But like this, the farm industry being hit. Other industries aren't going 30% under, but the farms, they're talking 30%, a third are going to be bankrupt by the end of this year. I mean, that's nuts. I mean, even if that's a pessimistic projection, we only get 20% declaring bankruptcy. That's still an unbelievably an unacceptable number, but that's what's happening. Are those people still going to vote for Trump? Are they still going to vote Republican? I don't know. It's crazy, and it's going to get worse. You got to look at what's going on, like in Georgia. We know what happened down there with the raid on the Hyundai plant. That was really a shame. We treated our prisoners in World War II much better than we treat average ordinary people that get a visa screw up, which is nuts. But that's what's happening under Trump's regime. But that's going to have long-lasting effect. The odds of Hyundai coming back, my impression is it's diminishing with each day, and that's because in Korea that really blew up. The Koreans are profoundly disappointed in the United States. They're profoundly angered at the United States, and they feel shamed and insulted by the United States. I mean, shamed to a deep level, and they're still trying to understand it. So our relationship with Korea is profoundly affected, and especially since Trump cannot say sorry. Trump is not doing anything to try and make amends. Like really, as far as I'm concerned, sending every one of those people that got incarcerated, sending each of them $100,000 and as part of a I'm sorry package would go a long way. But he's not saying he's sorry. He's not saying he's just saying come on back and teach our people. And after that, then you can get the fuck out. He can't even ask for them to be here without insulting them at the same time. It's really hard to get one's head around Trump. What's he doing? He's so irrational. But then again, I say irrational, but yet who's more irrational? The crazy man or the people who follow the crazy man? Trump is inside his own head. He cannot see himself. So he doesn't understand how crazy he is. But that's the way crazy people are. They don't see themselves as crazy. But other people on the outside, they do. But yet the MAGA people, they don't. They also seem to be operating as if they're on the inside of Trump's head, not on the outside, where they're able to see and understand what's going on. Now, will the MAGA people maintain their loyalty to Trump as they lose their jobs, as their grandmother, is kicked out of the nursing home and has to come live with them, as their hospitals close down that are nearby, and they have to drive 100 miles or 200 miles to get to a hospital because the rural ones are closing? Are they still going to be enamored with Donald Trump? I don't know. Logic would say no. Logic would say they should be mad as hell over him. But that does not seem to be the case. The polls still show him at about a 41% approval rating. Yeah, it's not quite what it was back 6 months ago when it was 49% or so. But still, considering all the damage that he's done, it's really barely a stumble. Anyway, another thing I want to talk about is Tallarico down in Texas. He seems to have gotten a lot of support in Texas. People like him down there. Some of the people reporting on him are saying that they seem to have more expectations of him than they did with Beto O'Rourke. The problem with Tallarico, though, is his rise has been so fast. And when a politician rises real fast and goes from obscurity up to fame and notoriety, sometimes they don't go through the educational process that they need to go through to become a proficient politician at a higher level. And part of being proficient as a politician at a higher level is being able to answer simple questions that can trip you up, but handle them with grace and getting out of them without tripping over yourself. Well, it seems that Tallarico has a problem. He claimed a while ago that there are 6 sexes. Not 2, not male and female, but 6. And he claims that science says this, which it does not, by the way. And it seems that he got confused about multichromosomal conditions. Normally, every normal person has 2 chromosomes, an X and a Y, or 2 X's. If they're an X and a Y, then you're like me, you're a guy. If you have two X's, then you're like my sister, a female. Okay? But there are people who exist that only have one X, or they have two X's and a Y, or two X's and two Y's, or something like that. They have some different combinations. The only thing they can't have, by the way, is just one Y or two Y's. And that's because the X chromosome, which is what helps define a female, there's some genes on the X chromosome that are necessary for a viable, functioning, living human person. So they need at least one X. So one X and one Y, you got yourself a man. One X and one X, you got yourself a woman. Other combinations of X's and Y's, as long as you got one X, you got potentially a viable person. But you don't get another sex. So, but the thing is that he didn't handle that properly, and so now he's made himself a bit of a laughingstock on that. And it seems like every time he tries to explain it, the deeper down that rabbit hole he goes, and that really basically shows, an incompetence, a type of incompetence. Because as a politician, you've got to be able to handle that kind of stuff. And just as a rule of thumb, when you get into that, up in the higher levels of politics, you don't talk about crap you don't really know. If you're not an expert in genetics, don't talk about genetics. If you're not an expert in mechanics, don't talk about your car engine. If you're not an expert in something, don't go there. Defer to the experts at all times. You're safe that way. Because when you start pontificating on crap you don't know anything about, the best you could do is be right. And then nobody gives a crap. But you make one little mistake, and now you look like a fool. You're not just really wrong, you look like a fool. And that's not a good look for anybody. And that's what I'm afraid about Tallarico, is I think that, unless he finds a way to put that to bed, or if his opponent, makes a much bigger gaffe and does something much worse to take the heat off of Tallarico, this little thing can be enough to keep Tallarico from winning the seat in Texas, despite everything that's happening. Because right now I think things are really, it's really right, because, one is Trump is really, he's really pissed all over the Mexican population in Texas. And when I say Texas, I really mean Mexican population. It's not really Latino. It's, you're not going to be finding Brazilians and Argentinians and much of them in Texas. It's going to be Mexicans, for the vast majority of the people, of the Latinos that are there. They're Mexicans. And he's really pissed on that group. So, and actually in the past elections, Trump actually did fairly well. He didn't do badly with the Mexicans. Mexicans like a strong man type of persona. So his machismo, I think many Mexicans found to some extent attractive, until he started, going after them, almost personally. Now the anger and the deep anger at Trump is palpable, and now they're not only against him, they're going to make sure they go to vote against him. That anger does motivate them to get out and vote. So I think that's one thing that's going to hurt him in Texas. The other thing that's going to hurt him in Texas is that whole issue with the migrant worker. And as you know, ICE has been rounding them up, and been doing that in Texas as well. And so the Texas farmers and ranchers, they've gotten hit real bad. And in Arkansas, they're talking about a third of farmers and ranchers going bankrupt. I have not found or seen anything that estimates that in Texas. However, I don't see Texas being hit much less than Arkansas. I don't know why Arkansas would be worse off than Texas. So, but even if it's half as much, even if instead of, let's say, a third go under, let's say only a sixth go under, so that's 15-16%. That's still a huge amount. It's like Russian roulette. 1 out of 6 dead. That's not good. And so that group, which is very solidly GOP and pro-Trump, I mean, that's as I see it, as I understand it, that group is really true core Texas GOP, and they're getting hit. They're the ones hitting getting the pain more than anybody. So that's going to be interesting to see how that develops. But I think that if anything, that group might not, even if they don't go anti-Trump and anti-GOP, they might lose the motivation to get out and vote. And even if they just lose 5% of their voters who just don't vote, that alone would be enough to swing the election of Tallarico, to him. At least it's the way I see it, because Beto O'Rourke, he only lost by like 3 points. That's not a lot. At least not in the history of Texas, where it used to be Republicans would win by 10%, 15%, 20%. Now with Beto O'Rourke, they won by, I think it was, a number that comes to my mind is 2.6%. That's what I'm remembering. I'm not sure if that's totally correct. But that is, that doesn't mean, that means that things are getting really close there, and that's in normal years. And in this coming year, it's going to be a big, huge Democratic year. I do recommend looking at my podcast about the realignment. I do believe a realignment is coming next year. And by a realignment, I mean, yeah, it's a wave. Right, there will be a blue wave next year. That I think is a given. But when I say realignment, that what I'm saying there is that it's going to be much more long lasting. Just like when FDR won in 1932, that was a big wave year for the Democrats, absolutely huge. But more than that, that was a realignment because that wave stuck for a couple generations. It redefined politics in the United States. And that is, and I believe that something like that, maybe not quite as extreme as that, but in that neighborhood is going to happen in the United States. And, the amount of pain that Trump is putting on the American people is already horrific, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. I know that they're talking about the Republicans and Trump throwing a bone to the farmers with some bailout money. Problem with that is that probably not going to happen, in this session, in this year, before the first of the year. And if it doesn't happen like within the next few weeks, it's not going to happen. Then it's not going to happen this year. And if it doesn't happen this year, that means it'll have to happen next year. And let's assume they do get their act together and they get some money on the table and they're sending it to the farmers by, let's say, next April. Wonderful. Except it's too late. Those farmers have gone bankrupt. You know, now you're trying to raise a corpse. You know, you need to get there with the life-saving medicine before the patient died. Coming after the patient died is really not all that useful and not all that helpful. And that's where the Republicans are. Plus, I doubt if they'll be able to come with the amount of money that would be necessary to save, 20-30% of America's farmers and ranchers. That's now we're into the probably trillions of dollars. I don't think that they have the wherewithal to do that. And plus, I don't think they really give a damn. So that's why. So I have several reasons why I don't think that that's going to happen. I'd be quite surprised if it does. Okay, let's move off of domestic right now. Let's move on to the next. Let's move on to Europe. Can Russia last much longer? Well, it just seems like every week, now it's getting really frequent. Every week things are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. 2.5 months ago, you had the spiderweb action where Ukraine knocked out on the ground something like 40 bombers, and Russia only had like 160, 180. So they ended up destroying about 20% of Russia's bombers on the ground. I mean, that's nuts. I mean, could you imagine an enemy, coming to the United States, to one of our air bases where we have our B-52 and B-1 and B-2 bombers, and destroying several squadrons of them? I mean, that's just unbelievable. Yet that's what happened. And that was 2.5 months ago, and now it's getting worse. Now the refineries are being hit. Now there are long lines for gasoline in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. That's not good. I think that now that the people are beginning to suffer and suffer directly from the war, Putin may not be much longer as leader of Russia. But that's the thing with dictators. They have, they pull out all the stops to stay in power. And they can slip and fall and be gone in a moment. Or they can hang on and hang on and hang on and hang on no matter how bad things get. And to see how bad things can get, all you got to do is look at North Korea, no matter how bad things have gotten there, they stayed in power. So, it's hard to deny the power of a dictator. But still, with that, there are limits. And so it's possible that Putin may not be lasting much longer. But I tell you, though, Putin has had an amazing effect on Europe. And he's really, altered Europe. Now, because before there was NATO and then there was the EU. And it wasn't quite an overlap because there was a lot of EU members that were not part of NATO. Like Sweden, like Finland, and I think Ireland. There was that. And then of course, United States bestrode the whole. Bestrode Europe as this monolithic power, and everybody in Europe kind of deferred to us. Well, Trump destroyed that by saying we will not support Europe in case that they're attacked by Russia. Now the Europeans are no longer deferring to us. They're not only not deferring to us, they're not even referring to us. Like recently, I don't know if you noticed in the news just a couple days ago, You had these drones going into Poland, about 100 of them from Belarus, but they were Russian drones, and they shot, and Poland shot them, a number of them down and all that, and they responded and reacted. And Sweden responded and reacted, and Germany and France and UK and all that. And what I found interesting is that there was an announcement about it, a comment on it by not by Trump, but by one of the spokesmen for the White House, and nobody gave a crap what he said. They reported it, and then that was it. Nobody responded to it. Nobody referred to it. Germany's responding to what's happening in Poland, and France is, and and Sweden is reacting strongly, and nobody's really even asking what the United States thinks about it or will do about it. No, they're not. They're taking care of themselves now. Europe has now decided to take care of itself. They're not even going to refer to the United States. They're not going to rely on the United States. They don't see the United States as being reliable anymore. You don't. There are things you just don't say. You don't, just like in a marriage. You don't joke about divorce. Once you start mentioning divorce, your marriage is as good as over, right? Well, it's kind of like that in NATO. Once you start saying you won't abide by Article 5, well, then what good are you? Get out of here. And so, like I said, the United States is really no longer in any functional way a part of NATO, because NATO, the NATO countries can no longer rely on us, so they're making their plans without us. They're making it, and if we happen to, and if something happens and we do show up, great. They'll be happy that we're supporting them. But if we don't, they're not going to be too surprised, and they're going to do what they need to do to survive. And they're finding themselves. All the nations in Europe now they're, before we couldn't get them to even spend 1% of their GDP on the military. Now they're going to be spending 4 and 5%. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And also what that means is they're going to build up their own military-industrial complex. They're going to be moving away from our military-industrial complex. Spain has already canceled the F-35. I expect other nations will also begin to exit the F-35 relationship. Poland won't. Poland is rock solid with us, but a lot of the other countries are not. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I think that the EU as being this happy hunting ground for our arms dealers, it's going to diminish. They're already artillery, rockets. They're a competition. They have competitive products to our AMRAAM and HIMARS rockets, ATACMS rockets, PRISM rockets, and all that. They have their own alternatives to those. They don't need them, and so you're going to see less and less American arms being sold to Europe, and that's a permanent arrangement. That's not something that we're going to be able to just when Trump leaves office and we get somebody else in the office that is much more pro-European and pro-NATO and all that. That's not going to have much effect. They'll like it. They'll be relieved, but the position that we were in, what they call the status quo ante, that's never going to be the same. We're never going to get that back. Um, and using the divorce metaphor, it's like when a couple goes through counseling and they come out the other side and they decide to stay married. They may stay married, and they may still love each other, and they still may make things work. But that marriage will never be what it was before they talked about divorce. Before one of them or both of them seriously contemplated divorce. That marriage will never go back to what it was before. And that's kind of like what's going to happen with the United States and Europe. Even after Trump is gone, the doubts will still linger. You see, because one of the problems is it's not just Trump. J.D. Vance echoes what Trump says. The Republicans on Capitol Hill in the Senate and the House, they repeat what Trump says. And so the Europeans, they're seeing this as not just merely Trump. They're seeing that Trump does represent a very strong anti-internationalist, anti-European strain in our political fabric. And so now they say, even if we get a, maybe let's say a Democrat comes in 28, and the guy is very strong pro-European, strong NATO, and couldn't be deeper into it than he could be. Even with that, they still would feel, yeah, but the next president after him might be from the other wing of our political spectrum here in the United States, and and so therefore they may say, okay, we love the United States, we like it, we want you on our side, but we're not going to bet our families and our children and our entire nations on whether or not the United States will come to their help when they need it. They're not going to rely on that, and you can't blame them. So I think that's kind of sad. I think it's kind of sad. And the United States has gone from its inception in 1781 to Trump never having dishonored a treaty. I mean, if we didn't want to honor it, we would formally exit it. But as long as that treaty was in place, we would honor it. The United States, like us or hate us, you couldn't say that we weren't an honorable country that lived up to our commitments. We said we would do something, we damn well did it. Well, not with Trump. I mean, Trump in 2018, he signed a trade deal with Canada. He comes in the first few weeks in office, he cancels that trade deal. What? So he governs by whimsy, and other countries see that, and they can't rely upon people like that, and they see us as a country supporting that and going along with it. So now they see us as being a whimsical country, big but silly, and our position in the world, I think, has been profoundly changed. And even if Trump, left the scene tonight, his impact will still be great and will be with us, for generations. It's going to take a long, long time to repair the damage that he has done to our honor, to our reputation, to our image around the world, our image as a trading partner, Heck, I use our image as just a place to go to on vacation. If you want to go gamble, there's other places in the world you can go to gamble. You don't need to come to Las Vegas. And you want to go to a sunny beach, you do not have to go to Florida. There are sunny beaches all over the world. There are even Disney worlds in other parts of the world. So if that's what they're coming here for, it's so sad what he has done to our country. It's just so sad. What can I say? Anyway, that's it, and I appreciate your attention to all this. If you please do look at some of my other podcasts, or not my other podcasts, but other videos that are not podcasts, called The Observationist. My name is Craig Dillon, by the way, and this is only this is my first one officially. I had another one on Saturday that was just a test one. This is my very first one. This is my inaugural podcast. I'm going to be doing this daily, talking about a bunch of issues. We'll be talking about a lot about the politics of the United States right now. It's fascinating. I'm going to be talking about geopolitics. One thing which I did a couple weeks ago, which I really, really enjoyed, and I was kind of surprised how they turned out, is I did a couple of videos that were AI war games, seeing what would happen if China tried to invade Taiwan. And I found those interesting. I found the results real interesting. Check those out if you can. Anyway, if you have any ideas or things you'd like to talk about, in the future we're going to have as I get more people watching, right now nobody is, we're going to get topics that are suggested by viewers, and I look forward to that when that begins to happen. Like I said, this is my first inaugural video, so right now the concurrent viewers are 0. So starting at the absolute bottom. Anyway, I look forward to talking with and seeing people who are interested in these kinds of topics. I find them fascinating. Anyway, so take care, and have a good day, and I'll be here tomorrow. My schedule is going to be roughly 9 o'clock Central Time, so I'll be 10 o'clock Eastern Time and 7 o'clock Pacific Time. That's going to be my schedule, and I'm going to be going for about half an hour to an hour topics, because I don't want to, we're going to go over, want to cover things that are relatively, require some depth of discussion, not just, things that only can be covered in a minute or two. So anyway, with that, I'm going to let you go. Take care, and hope to see you guys tomorrow.